All right, peace. So I'm about to clear up this whole transatlantic slave trade thing. There was no transatlantic slave trade. Complete lie. They're very good at what they teach you in school, aren't they? So follow me. The African and the African American are two different people. How did they blend and become one person? Okay. So the British had a company called the British Royal African Company. They try to make it seem like the Europeans came to Africa and they just threw nets over African and grabbed them up and threw them on ships. That's a complete lie. When the Europeans got to Africa, when the British got to Africa, they met the Oyo Empire, the Benin Empire, okay? They met the Congo Empire. They knew if they went in there and they took people, that will be a declaration of war, and they knew and even said that these empires will wipe them out in a matter of seconds. Full military, sophisticated empires they met there. So what happened? These empires were fighting against each other. So to take an economic advantage over this, they sold weapons to one part of the empire and sold weapons to the other part, right? Same thing they do today, fund both sides of a war. But you know what they told the Benin and the Oyo Empire? They said, the only payment we are going to take is human bodies. It's very important you understand that. They told these empires, the only payment we are going to take is human bodies. They created the British Royal African Company, made for chattel slavery. Also, these empires had strict laws and they had criminals, petty thieves and stuff like that. So they also told them, sell us your criminals. That's how they got Africans on their ships. But here's the second part. The British knew if that these people held on to their names, these Fulanis, these Oyos, right? These Benin people, if they held on to their names, right, they will be creating war crimes. So on the British ledger, they wrote all of them down as Negroes. Are you following me? This is when Africans start getting the Negro name. But it's very important you understand this part. The reason why I use the word African is because when the British got there, African did not exist. The people in Africa did not call themselves Africans. That was created later by the British as well. These people called themselves, particularly their tribal names. These people, if you went over there wasn't no place called Africa. They referred to themselves as this empire, that empire, and this family name. That whole Africa and Negro, that came from them. They did that to make sure that these empires do not find them later and wipe them the fuck out. So when they took their criminals and they took their brothers and sisters, they had to erase them in British ledgers. That's how they got to America. All right. So now, remember, the British was the biggest for slave trade. And they had colonies in the Americas. So when they brought them into these colonies, they got mixed in, okay, with other Native Americans that were from America, okay? Other Native Americans that are from this country. So here's the thing you have to understand, right? These Africans were on southern plantations. The same time that the Gullah Geechee War was going on, the Black Seminole War that was going on in Florida, the same time the American Revolution was going on in upstate New York. So the Native Americans in upstate New York were not in contact with the Africans and the Native Americans down there in Florida. Plus, Florida did not belong to the Americas yet. It belonged to Spain. So what happened? These Africans that the British caught escaped and ran to Florida and met Black Native Americans, aka African Americans. Okay? Some of the natives, some of them were native in South Carolina. So we had black natives in South Carolina, black natives in the Georgia region called the Gullah Geechee. But mixed in with them were Africans. So when they escaped with Africans into Florida. And at that time, because Florida belonged to the Spanish armed them. The Spanish gave them weapons in order to fight their slave masters. You understand? And they had children with these black Native Americans, and they became black Seminoles. It was just the first couple generations were a mix of the Africans that the British took from these empires, and a mix of these Native Americans, aka African Americans, right here in South Carolina, Georgia, and the Florida region. That's where the confusion is coming in at. But in the history books, they tell you that they went and got all of these people from Africa, and they all came to America via the transatlantic slave trade. Now, this video is going to get very long, so I got to break this up in two parts. So that's what happened. Then you have another group of Native Americans way up in upstate New York. They got a whole empire up there called the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederation. 5 nations, which later became 6 nation Iroquois. That empire up there did not experience chattel slavery because they had a military and they had an alliance with the British Empire. You understand? So when the British slaves, when black people was doing chattel slavery in the South, there were black people up north, upstate New York, part of the Iroquois nation, who did not experience slavery at all. Do you understand? This is how your Africans got mixed in with your African Americans, and on British ledgers, they made all of those people Negro, so that the Oyo, the Benin, and the Congo empires would not come after their ass and erase them. They had to hide these people. And I'll do a part 2. Peace.